Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful guests. Today we're joined by Jody Meacham, a great community activist and, more importantly, an author. So Jody, you've written a book lately.
Yes, I have. It's my first novel. It's called Through the Heart of the South, and it's partly autobiographical. It's drawn from my experience growing up in a small town in North Carolina.
North Carolina?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about where you grew up. Well, that's my question. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Hamlet, which pretty much describes how big a place it was. It was a small railroad town. Railroad was the reason for the town's existence. It was the backbone of the town's economy. And in the 1950s and 1960s, it was in the throes of the civil rights era. And I say the throes not in a pejorative way, but it was a struggle for the town because it was, like many small southern towns, it was divided almost equally between black people and white people. And society existed in one way before the civil rights era, and the civil rights era was a transition into an entirely new society there, and the ripples from that are still being felt.
So you grew up in Hamlet. You were in the center of this,
Right.
in a way, and well, I want to talk about the book in a little bit. What was it like for you growing up in this era?
I loved growing up in Hamlet. My father was a postal clerk. My mother was a bookkeeper at the furniture store in town, and later at a car dealership in town. It was the middle class family. And I grew up surrounded by cousins and grandparents and brother and sister. And it was, in many ways that people might recognize from Andy Griffith and Mayberry, it was sort of that existence.
Oh, okay.
And then in ways that you would not recognize from Mayberry, there was an entirely different group of people in town who were almost invisible, at least from my perspective as a white person. It was the black population. And but like most white families in town, we had a black maid who worked with our family my entire time growing up. So this lady was basically my mother during the daytimes and when I came home from school with my brother and sister. And this was pretty common throughout the South, and was it was a theme that I struggled with in in the book, and I dedicated the book to Annie Pride, who was our family maid.
Annie Pride. Well, and there are characters just in who you've mentioned growing up with that I feel like I've read in the book. So I guess that's what they mean by autobiographical.
Yes, the central character of the book is named Chris McAndrew, and that is basically me. And Chris McAndrew is a high school senior. He has been through 11 years of school, and he has been to all white schools. And for his senior year, the schools are finally being integrated at some indeterminate point in the 1960s. And the two school systems, one black, one white, that existed in the town will exist that way no longer. There will now be one school system, and everybody in town will go to the same high school. And that's where the story begins, is right before school opens. And the story takes place in Chris's senior year of high school. So part of the story has to do with his awakening to the larger society of the town that he has been ignorant of up to now because he's lived in racially separate societies.
Right. He seemed very accepting of the times and then seems to have an awareness at that time of flowering.
Right. There's really very little that happens in his early life. And you were just asking me how I like growing up in Hamlet. I loved growing up in Hamlet. And it's easy to love growing up in a place when you can be ignorant of the troubles that exist beneath the surface. And one of the things that segregation allowed was for people, at least white people, the people in the controlling society, to be almost oblivious to the larger problems in the society and the inequities in the society. So in the course of the senior year, Chris is going to be confronted with lots of different things that heighten his awareness, raise his consciousness.
I like the way you say that. You leave it as kind of a cliffhanger, and for more information, go to the book.
Right.
Well, we'll talk about that. You've had a very interesting career and continue to be involved in community reporting. Tell us a little bit more about maybe life after Hamlet.
Sure. Most of my life has been spent as a newspaper reporter, and I began at smaller newspapers in North Carolina and worked for 15 years at the San Jose Mercury News. And most of that time as a newspaper reporter was as a sports writer. So I covered a half dozen Olympics for the Mercury News and a few Super Bowls and those kind of things. So they were very exciting, high-level, high-visibility events. And one of the things, going back to the book for just a second, one of the things that Chris dreams of in the book is sort of how he ties into the larger world. He knows he's in the small town called Shortridge, North Carolina, in the book. And so being a newspaper reporter was fulfilling to me because it allowed me to get out in a world much larger than the world that I had grown up in, and going to international sports events and that kind of thing. It was just fantastic for me. And in the course of my sports writing career, one of the themes I think that I kept coming back to was probably dictated by my upbringing. I ended up writing a lot about women's sports because we were in the Title IX era, and before the passage of that civil rights law, women did not get equal opportunities in school sports. And I saw that as a civil rights issue, and a lot of the writing that I did was focused on that issue, and a lot of the Olympic coverage I did allowed me to cover women athletes at a very high level. When I left the Mercury News, and I became a publicity person for a professional women's soccer team in San Jose for 3 years.
Oh, okay. So along the way, you got married, had a family, went from Hamlet to San Jose via some circuitous route. Give us some details. Who'd you marry? Let's hear the good stuff.
Okay. My wife, Emily, is also a writer, a technical writer, and coming to Silicon Valley was very advantageous for her. She was a very technical person. Technical writing has to do with the manuals and instructions for using the products that her company makes. She works for a very high-tech company which actually designs software so that computer chips and computer components can be designed. So she has to understand all this and be able to write about it in a way that other technical people, not me, can understand. So I can read things that she writes and be impressed by them and yet not understand them at all. And my son is a junior at UC Davis, and I think he's sort of picked up on the artistic side of both of his parents. He has a double major in political science and dramatic arts.
Oh.
And so he participates quite a bit in theater at Davis. He's had several roles, and if he achieves what he would like to achieve, he will be an actor in his career.
That sounds great. So here you are, Silicon Valley, done this sports reporting. Did you think along the way, I really want to put together something that encapsulates my upbringing in that very special time in American history?
I think I always, it didn't coalesce into being a book at first. I have thought for years about the impact of growing up where I did and in the circumstances that I did. And at some point that would have to be expressed and in some way. I didn't know how that would be. And it was really in my experience as a sports writer in San Jose when I was traveling around the country and covering events with other people, other sports writers, and we would come together for the different things that we covered, Olympic-related events and things like that. And in the course of that, you develop a group of friends, and you go out to dinner after the sports event is over and have conversations. And one of my friends was Phil Hirsch from the Chicago Tribune. And he was among several friends who were fascinated at some of the tales that I told of my growing up in Hamlet, and suggested that this ought to be in a book. And at the time I was thinking, well, this would be a nonfiction book. But as things evolved, it turned into a novel. So the tale is fiction, even though many of the things that happened in the story happened in some form in reality.
At the beginning, in the beginning of the book, there's a explosion, and a lake ends up getting drained.
Right.
Did that happen?
There is a lake in my hometown that, as in the book, was the sort of the town swimming hole. It was segregated, and it was for white people only, but it was where every summer my family, my brothers and I, we spent almost every day at this lake. And at some point along the way, the dam for that lake was breached and the lake drained. The accurate historical reasons why this happened, I'm not aware of, but in my book, it happens in the course of two young black boys going swimming in this lake, and the owner of the lake deciding that he can't have that happen in this small town.
Right.
And so the dam is dynamited.
Yeah. Well, it was very dramatic, and it made me go, what is going on here? And yet that kind of thing easily could happen. Someone is standing up to the harbinger of integration and saying, I'm not going to have that.
The anecdote that you're pointing out from the book is typical of the way the book is put together, in that almost everything in the book has a real life antecedent, although it may not have happened in the exact same way. But there's, the civil rights history of the South is full of occasions when municipal swimming pools would be closed rather than integrated. I mean, even though these were public facilities, the one in my book was privately owned, but publicly operated facilities in the South, public only meant white people at the time.
Got it.
And so, in essence, municipal governments, county governments, state governments really operated by and for the white population. And,
Got it.
And not only did black people not get to go to the white schools, but they didn't get to go into the courthouse unless they were the accused, or into the swimming pool that everybody in town's tax money paid for.
Got it. We're going to take a break. When we come back, lots more to talk about.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Assemblyman Paul Fong. I want to welcome you to the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, the party of inclusion and diversity. You can join a variety of clubs and associates of the party: the Silicon Valley APA Democratic Club, the African American Democratic Club, the Latino Democratic Caucus, the Peninsula Democratic Coalition, Dawn Democratic Activists for Women Now, a variety of associates and clubs that you can get involved with. Please join us, and you can call us at 408-445-9500. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Democratic Television and our guest, Jody Meacham. Jody, we were talking about the timing of the book, and actually now we're kind of into Black History Month. So your book really speaks to the awareness of changing times, a unification of our country. That's the optimistic way to look at it, but integration in the South. And you use the train metaphor, and the train is a big part of the book, and we learn about the Pullman porters and everything. Were those folks that you interacted with or saw in town or got to know?
They were. The railroad culture permeated my hometown, and railroad porters were an icon in the civil rights movement. I didn't know it as a high school student. I came to know it later. But in the course of writing my book, I used some names like Dellums, which anybody in Oakland or the Bay Area should be well aware of. Well, the original Dellums, and I'm forgetting his first name now, was a railroad sleeping car porter. Helped found the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, which was the first black labor union in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a Dellums Street in my story, and there is a statue of Mr. Dellums at the Amtrak station in Oakland today. So there is a Pullman porter who plays a key role in the story of Through the Heart of the South, and Through the Heart of the South itself was the slogan of the railroad that ran through my hometown, and I thought it was an apt title, not only because it was railroad related, but because of the story, which is about the overturning of the social structure, really, of the Old South into what we have today. And one of the things that has struck me, because we're thinking about Black History Month this month, is we have a black president and have had one for 2 years, and I think a lot of people, whether they voted for Obama or not in 2008, seems like a long time ago now, whether they voted for him or not, recognized what a step it was that this country would elect a black person to be the chief executive of our government. And subsequent to that, I think a lot of the news and the developments in the news and the way politics has gone has reminded us all that even though we have taken this step, which was unimaginable at the time that I was in high school in the South, we've been reminded of how much further we still have to go, because in a lot of ways, since he became president, the country has been caught up again in civil rights issues and re-arguing some of the same things that I would have thought had been settled in the 1960s and 1970s, and are now coming back in new forms, and we talk about them maybe with different words, but we're still talking about issues of equal rights for all people in the country, and not having various classes of citizenship where some people have these privileges and some people have lesser privileges, and the country, as is obvious, is still torn about these issues today. The strange thing to me is not just that this has come back, but that we hear this kind of talk in parts of the country outside the South today.
Yeah. Now, a question I have, given what you just said, you have gone back to Hamlet. You've taken your book, you've come back, and how were you received? How was the book received? And how were people talking about times?
Well, it was very gratifying in a lot of ways. I went back to Hamlet right after Christmas, and there is a historic railroad station and museum in the center of town. It's the town landmark, and it serves as the basis for several key scenes in the novel. And so going back there and having the first book signing for me was it was just perfect in a lot of ways. And to have old friends come out and acknowledge the book was very gratifying. And I know that had this same book been written in the time that the story took place, the book would not have been as well received as it was. But there are still racial divisions in Hamlet, and even though I spent a good deal of time researching the book and interviewing black classmates that I had in high school to be sure that I accurately portrayed their experience of school integration in the book. The event that the book signing in Hamlet was a virtually all-white affair. And so that takes away from the gratification.
Well, that's an interesting fact. Is your family's maid still alive, or her descendants?
Annie Pride, who was our family maid, is dead now, and the last couple of times I've been to Hamlet, I've been able to find her grave at the church where she was a member and an active participant. So I don't know if it's unique to Southern culture, but I know a big part of Southern culture is visiting graves, and every time I go back to Hamlet, I visit where my parents are buried and my grandparents are buried, and where Annie is buried. And so that's, and the final scene in the book takes place in the town cemetery, where Chris McAndrew returns and has conversations with the people in the graves that he visits.
Yeah. Don't give away too much now. We really need to drive people to
well, that
order
doesn't,
the book.
It doesn't give away the plot or the elephant stampede or the plane crash.
So times are different. They're the same, but they're also different. We've had recent tragedies in America. I'm thinking of Tucson and the shooting of the congresswoman, and now a call for civility. Right. And for better communication. Do you see parallels between what didn't happen way back then and what still needs to happen today?
I do, and the big parallel that I see is that when President Obama made the remarks that he did last month in Tucson, he called for civility, but he also called for honesty in our civil discourse. And I think one of the reasons that we seem to be revisiting history and going back and re-arguing some of the same issues that we thought we had settled in the civil rights era is because I don't believe America has been completely honest with itself about what our real history has been, and with each other as a national community. And part of that is probably because it's so painful that we want to put it in the past and get beyond it. And I think we have suffered as a result of that sort of approach to things, and not being willing to be what I would call brutally honest with ourselves about the way that we have fallen short of what we, I think, hold in common as our national ideals of equal treatment for everyone, and our own role in the lack of equality in this country.
Yeah, pretty heavy topics. Well, we can't have this discussion without telling people how they may find the book. So you've got a unique route in terms of publishing. Explain that and tell us ultimately how can we get the book.
Right. This book was a struggle to bring to fruition, because for several years I tried to get an agent or a publisher to take on the book and publish it, and was unsuccessful, and was finally persuaded by some people in the industry who said, as a first-time novelist, and in this economy that's virtually impossible, go the self-publishing route, which is what I did. And technology has made it possible today for a person to self-publish a book, which is what I have done. And so the book is available online from my website at jodymeacham.com.
Let's have a spelling, Jody. I can do that part.
Correct. MEACHAM.com. It can be ordered there as a paperback, in the Kindle version, or another e-reader version called Nook. Kindle is Amazon.com's version. Nook is Barnes & Noble. And the book is, in paperback is also available on Amazon.com. So, or if you were to happen to be in Hamlet, North Carolina, you could visit the railroad depot there, and it's sold over the counter.
And it's in the heart of the South.
And through the heart of the South.
Through the heart of the South. That's
Yes.
an important distinction.
Yes.
Well, that does make me need to ask you, do you have another book, another novel to move the story forward, or are you going to get us up to current times?
I'm not sure that I will pick up with these same characters and the same story in my next novel, but there is a next novel that I am working on. When I grow up, I hope to be a novelist, and so we'll just see how that goes.
Can you give us any hints? 30 seconds left.
I think there will be a theme in all of the books that I write of human rights and treatment of humans humanely.
Well, that sounds great. That makes me want to get everybody ready for the next book. So thank you very much, Jody Meacham or jodymeacham.com in terms of how we're going to get this information out there. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Sure. Thanks for watching Democratic Television. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org. Help make a difference, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Hello, my name is Clark Williams, and I'm Vice Chair of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party. I'm a lifetime Democratic activist, but there are not enough of us, and I know you're out there, and we need you to join me. I'm also a father, and I'm teaching my 6-year-old daughter to also become a Democratic activist. She needs some friends to join us too. So if you're out there and you've got kids and you're looking for something fun to do on a weekend, we really need you to come join us in helping elect Democrats in 2010. To find us or to learn more, contact area code 408-445-9500. Or you can also find us on the web at www.sccdp.org. I hope to see you soon on the campaign trail.